El Salvador has like a very special place in my heart. From visiting it, from getting to know the people. And I'd say this to people like who haven't been there. Go to it for Bitcoin, go to it for whatever, but what you should pay attention to when you visit El Salvador is look at people's faces there. And if you can speak Spanish or you can find a tour guide and people who speak English there, speak to locals and ask them about their country. Because I think more in El Salvador than almost any other place in the world right now, people are extremely hopeful for the future there. And hope is infectious. And that's what's going on in El Salvador right now. You have an infectious level of hope when you travel there, when you leave. And it's hard not to have like a smile on your face in that country. So I love that. Like, that's really, really special.
Hello, beautiful people of the internet. Welcome once again to Bitcoiner podcast. Before starting the show, I just want to share with you some exciting news really quick. So you may be wondering why I have been absent the past couple of weeks, couple of days. And the reason why is because I have been doing some really cool stuff, actually. So, at the beginning of September, we have the Apple keynote where they presented the new iPhones. If you don't know, I'm also a tech reviewer, so I have been doing really cool Apple reviews. So if you want to visit my Medium account, you will find my Apple reviews, everything related about the new 4 models of iPhone. So that took me a lot of time, also because we had to do some tests and also the reviews, and it's really fun, but it takes time. So yeah, that's why I have been absent the last couple of days. But I know that is not related to Bitcoin, but this is related to Bitcoin, and we are actually also building a website of the show. So I'm going to show you really quick. This is not finished yet, but I just want to give you a sneak peek of what I have been working on the last couple of days. So the Apple reviews, it was really fun. But again, we're also building a website about the podcast. So yeah, here's the about. Here, if there are some sections you want to start learning about Bitcoin, here are some pills about previous episodes. So really cool. I invite you to watch them because they are really insightful. So this podcast is also presented. This podcast, it has now 3 new partners. So one of them is Bitblock Boom, the other one is Bitbox02, and the other one is Bitcoin Conference 2024. So as you know, I want you that you have some advantage and some benefits to be part of this community. So that's why I close some deals with Bitbox02, so you will have some discount also as Blockstream. So you will have several options in whichever device, hardware wallet you want to make self-custody of your own Bitcoin. So now you have several options or where device you want to use. Both are the GOATs, I think, are the GOATs, the greatest of all time. I think they are really great. So that's why they partnered with me and I partnered with them. So Bitblock Boom is one of my dearest friends, Gary Leland, is one of the actually oldest and largest Bitcoin conference in the world. So they even didn't stop in the pandemic. So shout out to them because they are really Bitcoin maxed and they provide a lot of education. So that's why they partnered with me. And yeah, Bitcoin Conference 2024, we'll see you in Nashville. I will see you in Amsterdam. So yeah, but I will tell you more about it in future episodes. So yeah, guys. So continuing there, this is more about the website. So this is what people are saying. These are the platforms where you can listen to the show. So apologize if you're listening to this in whichever of those these platforms, Fountain, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, because you're not watching what I'm saying. But I try to do the best I can describing everything that is on the website. And here are some ways that you can support the show. As you may know, this is all self-produced by me. I enjoy it. This is my life. It's super I'm super grateful of what I do. I'm having fun a lot, and of course I'm learning a lot, and hopefully I know that you guys are learning too. So yeah, if you want to support the show, here are several options where you can donate some satoshis. We will have some future films and also future projects based in El Salvador. So yeah, that will be super good to feature them here on the website. And yeah, as I mentioned earlier, here are where you can grab some discount for use to have some benefits. So if you want some discount to go to BitBlock Boom in Dallas, Texas, so here you can grab some discounts also from Blockstreams for your Jade wallet and also from Bitbox02. And you want to know more about the podcast. And last but not least, these are some ways that you can connect with me directly through socials. And yeah, we'll start also streaming the show on Rumble, and you can also support the show in locals. So, but yeah, we'll talk about it in future episodes. So yeah, that's everything that I want to say. That's all the news that I want to share with you. And actually, I need to do the introduction here because, while I was editing the show, I forgot to add the introduction. So I'm going to do just the introduction right here, right now. So yeah, let's do it. So welcome once again to Beat Corner Podcast. Today, we have the great pleasure to talk with this guy that you probably know him from TikTok and also from YouTube. He made this quite interesting content where he challenged himself to explain Bitcoin in less than 60 seconds. It's quite amazing, guys. So you probably know him as Kinetic Finance, but he's also known as Julian Figueroa. So Julian, thank you for being here. Thank you for your time and welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Juan. Excited to chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I'm going to say that I'm really huge fan, not just about your YouTube channel, because I actually more enthusiast about your TikTok videos or Instagram videos, because that idea, and we're going to talk about that, but that idea of teaching about money and teaching about Bitcoin in less than 60 minutes is a challenge, man. Well done.
It's hard. Yeah, it's not easy. But the fun part about it is because we all know like the Bitcoin journey is pretty long and there's all these things we have to touch. You can essentially just make so many different chapters of the journey, like what the WTF happened in 1971, what is the mem who made Bitcoin, like everything we learn in Bitcoin. It is challenging, but it is possible to get everything into little 60-second chapters, which is fun. And so that's kind of been my job over the last year, is to just split it up and it's a balance between, here's just a bunch of information about Bitcoin, and then here are some things that are a bit more clickbaity. I put on a wig a couple of weeks ago for one of the shorts, because I think that's the other thing too with education and teaching people about Bitcoin, is that if you're just going to explain information to the camera, it's not going to show up on all the algorithms. So you gotta do it in a catchy way as well. And it's a pretty good little challenge, but it's been super fun.
Yeah, congratulations, man. Because I actually I told the same thing to one of my friends that is Lina. So I should shout out to her, because I tell that there's a challenge to, as you said, you have a lot of information about money, about Bitcoin, but the challenge in her case to put it in a frame of a comics, and in her case to put it in 60 seconds and to explain, go to the points, to the highlights, to the information. It's really challenging, and you do it well. So congratulations again.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a journey, and it's exciting because I think a lot of people, especially during the bear markets, they get burnt out because you'll make all these pieces of media or education, but in the bear markets, it's just so quiet. And so the challenge for me is like, I want to build this through the bear market. I don't want a whole bunch of people to show up in the bull market and then, I have a lot more explaining to do. And so in the bear market is really when you get to experiment with new mediums and try different things and get a real glimpse of what the audience is for Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is not defined by those, 1 in 4 years or 2 in 4 years where you have a whole bunch of newbies, right? I think it's really defined by the people who stick around for 4+ years, and the people who are learning about Bitcoin and watching the videos right now. A lot of them are, Bitcoiners who have been around forever, but a lot of them beyond that are people who have been really skeptical about Bitcoin too for the last 3-4 years. And so it's been cool reaching out to them. And trust me, I've gotten my fair share of people calling me I'm like an idiot for saying some of the things that I've said about money. You got to deal with that too, but that's part of the process.
No, I get it, and I feel related to that, because that's actually one of my goals too. Because develop and make a lot of content here, the educational content, because as you said, we're in the beer market, so that this is the time when you actually do things. And in the bull market, well, people get excited, so they want to learn more. And in my case,
the bull market is when the sponsors come.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do what you
Absolutely.
do.
Yeah, absolutely. They see the money, they come here. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, but yeah, the thing is that I want actually that, because even we have a big challenge. I mean, Salvadorans, because we have it as a legal tender, so we had to make a lot of education for other Salvadorans. And shout out to all the people that are working in El Salvador every single day, not just Salvadorans, but people around the world that goes there and educating, give their best to people, and to make Bitcoin as easy as possible for everyone. But okay, we're going to talk about El Salvador, because I know you went there. You actually made two films, well, two parts of one film in YouTube. Actually, it was really great. We're going to talk about that. But before that, if you don't mind, can you please introduce a little bit about yourself, like your past, where are you from, maybe what did you study, so maybe the audience can know you a little bit better?
The origin story, of course.
Yeah, the origins.
So I am a film kid. I'll call myself a kid still. I feel very childlike when I make these things. I went to film school back between 2012 to 2016 at the University of British Columbia, got a bachelor's degree there for film production. And when you get a degree in film production, you kind of go one of two ways. Either you try and go into like feature filmmaking, TV, Hollywood type stuff, or you go down the route of more independent filmmaking, maybe commercial, corporate boutique. You work at a small agency, make short videos. Or if you're going to do the Hollywood thing, you become an assistant and you sort of have to work your way up the ladder. But it's a pretty long process. You're spending probably like 3 years plus just fetching people coffees. And then maybe they give you a role as a cinematographer or an assistant editor on something, and you work your way up. And so me being me, I didn't want to do that. So I said, okay, the route that I'm going to pick in terms of filmmaking is probably going to be more doing commercials and doing stuff locally, video production essentially, versus film production. And so I worked as an editor at a company for about 3 years, actually starting about 2015 as an editor. So firsthand, even while I was in film school, I was learning about how to edit advertisements, commercials, finding music, creating the flow in a video, taking hours of interviews and compressing them into 2 minutes. And so I learned a lot about storytelling that way, because especially corporate videos, you watch them like these investor videos where basically it's like the CEO talking to camera, like, this is what my company is doing and solving, and this is why you should invest in us. Those videos look boring on the surface, or challenging, or not challenging, but they look a little bit boring and scripted on the surface. But a lot of the time you'll have about 2-3 hours of interviews with these CEOs. And in those, you have to find 2 minutes that tell an actual story, because they'll just go off like I'm going off right now, rambling about all sorts of things. But in those 2 hours,
but this is a podcast.
Yeah, it's a podcast, so it's okay. They'll go off for 2-3 minutes, and yeah, you have to find the story in there of the company and portray it in the best light possible. And so I love that. For years I was doing a lot of those videos, and we were doing fun commercials as well. Pretty cinematic stuff. We did like these spec ads for Tesla and these other companies. I got really good at that after a while, and then I had some money saved up. I also had some leftover student loans, and I was like, well, I got some money. What should I, put my money into? And it was a split between marijuana stocks, because in Canada we hadn't legalized marijuana yet, and so they were all the rage at the time. And then the other chunk I put into Bitcoin and Ethereum, and both of them did really well. But this was back in 2016, so Bitcoin and Ethereum ended up doing really well. My history with Bitcoin, the reason that I even knew about it at the time, was I actually bought some Bitcoin back in 2013, but it was to buy drugs, because I was a bad boy back in the day. But I bought some Bitcoin, bought some drugs, didn't touch it for 3 years, didn't care. All I looked at it was for a tool. And then in 2016, I was like, oh, this seemed kind of cool. It ended up going up a lot in value. What else is there? And I went down the Ethereum, rabbit hole. I was really interested in all that stuff, smart contracts, blockchain, everything seemed really cool at the time. But I bought both. I bought Bitcoin and Ethereum. They both did really well. And they did so well that I ended up just quitting my job and starting my own business. And in my own business, we did similar stuff. So I made commercials for different companies, but what I focused on more was literally companies in the things I'd invested in. So I ended up making videos for the same marijuana companies I bought the stocks in, because I thought, well, I know how to make videos. I've done all this research on the companies that I wanted to invest in. And it was the same with Ethereum. Like at the time I was really into, ICOs and all these things. And, our company ended up doing like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of videos for ICOs back in 2016, 2017. So the Bitcoin maximalists, they can come at me. I definitely went down the shitcoin rabbit hole for a few years. And not only did I go down the rabbit hole, I was making their marketing material for a bit as well and getting paid in them and all this stuff. But the first sign to me that something was wrong was essentially every single product or company that we made these videos for, they either didn't even launch their ICO or it completely flopped and the communities died. And I was noticing that all over the place. And it was like, okay, what does this remind me of? And it was drawing a lot of parallels to like the 2000 bubble. And that's when I really started getting skeptical of, the whole altcoin stuff. But with Bitcoin, it looked like, the Bitcoin community kept building and there was a real use case for it. So I ended up slowly shifting more towards Bitcoin. Fast forward to the pandemic. At the time before then, I started to make a few videos about Bitcoin because I was just learning about it at the same time. I ended up losing money in one of these exchange, collapses, Quadriga. That was my first ever YouTube video, was just explaining Quadriga. I was just, I was so shook up by that. But I was like, well, I should explain it to other people. And then that got good feedback. And I just started making, other videos explaining Bitcoin concepts, really small at the time. And then in 2020, Michael Saylor bought his first Bitcoin. And that, string of podcasts that he did a few months later, he was the first person I'd ever really heard, I think, besides Andreas Antonopoulos, that really had this like different understanding of how powerful Bitcoin could be. And that really inspired me to really focus a lot more on Bitcoin's potential. Its potential for social justice around the world, giving people access to financial tools that had never had them, and the potential for it to bring back a sound money standard, something I had never even thought about too much, and the importance of it, and what we lost when we left, basically that with the US dollar back in the 70s. And it's just like every Bitcoiner's journey, you start to really realize how powerful Bitcoin is and how big of a market the world has for a sound money. Every society relies on it in some way or another, and societies and civilization coalesces around the strongest form of money. And Michael Saylor just did such a good job of making that clear. And after just watching him for a bit, I realized, man, I got to do this. I got to start taking what he's been saying and explain it in my own way to people, a little bit simpler. And so yeah, I mean, ever since 2020, 21, I even did like a little video that was like the biography of Michael Saylor, because I kind of wondered, like, why is this guy so eloquent? Like, how is he speaking so well about this? And then I learned, he predicted, the iPhone becoming like the biggest computing platform, and he, predicted the internet, wave in the 2000s. And he's just been on top of things like pretty early before they blew up. And Bitcoin was the first thing where I was like, well, I can really put my skin in the game now. And his dedication and his commitment to Bitcoin was really inspiring. And so I was like, well, if he can do it, he's going to put billions on the line. I can put a bit of my time on the line too, to try and teach it to people, because I really felt passionate about it and I felt that energy through him. And so, long story short.
Sorry. Do you think that was your aha moment? You consider like your aha moment?
Yeah, I mean, I'd known and I'd held Bitcoin for years, but for me, it really wasn't until Michael Saylor speaking so eloquently about, how money is energy and how we interact with money as energy and how we interact with it as a fundamental technology. It wasn't until he brought those kind of ideas to the limelight for me, where I suddenly started realizing how important Bitcoin was as something beyond an investment. Because I think up to that point, I'd looked at it like, here's a technology, I'm buying something like an Apple stock, but it's decentralized. I'm just investing in a technology. Might work, might not, but I'll have some money in it. And then when I realized, how much bigger it could possibly be than Apple or any one of these things, I was like, no, I got to get on board with this. And yeah, I've been obsessed, man. I imagine it's the same for you. You probably dabbled in it, and then you got really, really passionate about it. And then you're like, I have to make a podcast about it. And that's all you can think about now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, actually, I love your story, man. And actually, yeah, it was quite like that. I actually also started with shitcoins like everybody else. But yeah, I studied, and even I'm an engineer, so I studied not Bitcoin precisely, but blockchain. It was one of my topics in the career. Really boring, actually. And but yeah, so I put it aside in that moment. But then a few years later, actually, my sister talked to me about Bitcoin. She works in economics, and my dad is a doctor and also knew about Bitcoin. So I was like, all right, I'm an engineer. No, I know a bit about Bitcoin. My sister she studied economics. She knows about Bitcoin. My dad is a doctor. So there's something here that I'm missing. So that's why I studied a lot more. And then actually, when El Salvador made it legal tender, when Najib made the announcement, I was hoping that I was expecting like a lot of produced content about Bitcoin from Salvadorans, because I know there's a lot of content. For example, Max Kaiser and Stacy, I always say they're making a really good job. Their podcast is amazing, and every project that they make. Natalie Brunel, everyone that has been in El Salvador, but they are not Salvadorians. And the point is that there has to be at least one Salvadorian, because you know your story. So, for example, you give your point of view because you're a Canadian, so you know what your struggles, so you know what you're facing on, your history, and it's the same thing. And I was expecting that, and I just wait like a few months and never saw it, and I was getting impatient really quick, and I was like, all right. And I was talking with my friends about it, even my family, and I was like, all right, by this time I know our history, I know about Bitcoin, and I think I'm gonna do it. And then I did. And my idea was sorry.
You know what I think is difficult, and I think maybe the reason we haven't seen more Spanish creators, and again, it could just be a language barrier thing, but when different languages and people from different backgrounds make content about anything, really, one of the reasons that you become popular is you start showing up on other influencers' feeds, and you have a chance to collaborate with other influencers, and you have a chance to get exposure through them. And I've really noticed the effect of that in my journey. Like, I had some of the early Bitcoin channels share my stuff, and I got like tons of followers through that. And if I really break down like, where did I get my followers and my views from, it's all from other Bitcoiners sharing it. And so the challenge is that English creators will not necessarily share Spanish content because they don't understand it. But because English creators have the biggest market share, they have the biggest impact, I think, in how new creators are found. And so it's a matter of like, the thing that's crazy about this is that I actually think in the immediate term, countries like in Latin America, like El Salvador, and in South America, they have the biggest market fit for Bitcoin and Bitcoin education. They're the ones actually using the Lightning wallets. Do you think we're all using them in the US and Canada? No, right? Like, they're being used in El Salvador, they're being used in all of these circular economies, most of which are based in Spanish-speaking countries. And they're the ones who need the education more than anyone. But I think the challenge is that so much of the available education is in English. And so maybe they're just consuming English videos, but I think it represents a big opportunity. And I think that's probably why you didn't see a lot of education from El Salvador, is just because it's hard there probably are other creators, but they're having a hard time getting seen because they're not getting boosted by all the other influencers out there. But I think it's coming. I think it's really coming, man.
And hopefully it's coming, because we need a lot of education. Yeah.
You know who I'd like to give I like to give a shout out to. I always like to give a shout out to people I can remember. His name's Adrian Trevino. I don't know if you've seen his stuff, but he does TikTok quite primarily, but he does similar stuff to me, 60-second breakdowns of Bitcoin concepts. Wow. And he's had people in his comments, but his views are awesome. Like, he's got 30,000 followers on TikTok. His videos get around 10,000 views each, and his stuff's amazing. Really concise explanations of Bitcoin in Spanish. And yeah, I love that stuff. Actually, I wish there was more of that in English, to be honest. So yeah.
Lovely. No, but yeah, one of the things that the main challengers is also the language barrier. Actually, that's why I subtitled this one, because, so in your case, we are speaking English in this episode, so they get it in Spanish. But the people that speak in Spanish, they're going to get it in English for English speakers. So the thing is, like, to make a bridge between educators and the people that need education. So that's a goal. That's a goal. And we will see. Yeah. And okay, but I love that you are a really good filmmaker. So before going deeper into Bitcoin, I want to ask you, how do you pick your content? Like, for example, you pick you produce what you want, or you do what your audience wants. In my case, it's a little bit, for example, both of them. There's a mixture, because I produce this in the way that something that I always wanted to see in a Salvadorian podcast. That's why I bring everyone that I bring here, like the best one, the best education possible. But I'll also hear my audience, and they say, like, you should bring more Spanish speaker from Salvador, and also, okay, I'm gonna do it. Just subtitle them, even if they're speaking in Spanish instead of in English. Okay, so I'm gonna do it. So how do you do that? How do you pick also?
It's a really good question. I think every creator kind of has to pick the journey that they want to go on, and I think there's different paths to it. Number one, you can just follow your heart. Just make whatever the hell you want to make, right? And if you're lucky, it's also what the audience wants to see, and then you do really well. The other route, and I think a lot of people choose it, is they listen and they care a lot about trends. What is trending? What do people want to hear in the Bitcoin space? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think sometimes it can result in people sort of chasing the hype dragon. So when I say, these are the people looking for what everybody else wants to hear, I'm talking about channels who are making daily content, like really going out there. And there's nothing wrong. Like, that stuff's great, and we need people on the front lines just talking about the news and all that. But it can get exhausting, and it can also get slow, because you're looking for all the cool headlines happening in Bitcoin. Oh, X country legalizes it. Oh, what's going on with the ETF? Oh, who, Michael Saylor, Elon Musk? Like, you can make stuff about that all day long, because in Bitcoin, thankfully, there's always a lot of news happening. And so you can just commentate on that. The challenge with that is, you have a lot more competition. There's a lot more people who want to do that every single day, want to talk about Bitcoin news, maybe have a unique perspective. But it's challenging. And also the videos, you make a video about, Tesla adding Bitcoin to the balance sheet. Well, in 2023, I don't care about that anymore, right? That was 2 years ago. And so the other route is, just trying to do educational stuff. Bitcoin Sessions does an amazing job at that, just breaking down stuff. And he has a mix of doing stuff that his audience asks for, but I would say for him, most of it is kind of his original ideas and products and things that he's tried out. And that's awesome. And the great stuff about that content is that people will watch those videos 2-3 years later as well. How to set up a Bitcoin node. A video like that never really gets old. Maybe we're getting better at making Bitcoin nodes, but that never really gets old. And so that content's great in that way as well. And you can build a great audience through that. When it comes to the stuff that I make, it's a mix of, I am starting with, when I started out, I didn't have an audience to ask what they wanted, right? So I started out just making stuff that I felt that I didn't quite, understand about Bitcoin, and I wanted to dive deeper in myself. And so half the video process was just trying to actually learn something that I didn't know about. And so once I finally felt like I got it, that was when I was able to finish a script up, talk to camera, explain certain concepts. And so the first videos I did were like, what is Bitcoin? What is Ethereum? How do you get exposure to Bitcoin without actually having to buy Bitcoin? Here are, 6 stocks that give you Bitcoin exposure without having to buy Bitcoin. Because I know that it's not so easy sometimes for people to, go on exchanges and do all that stuff.
Yeah.
And what happened during Quadriga? That was a really weird story for a while. No one understood. I was a part of it. So I kind of tried to explain that. And through just the process of making things I was curious about, I found out what people were most interested in. And I think a lot of the same things still hold true. People are always curious, no matter who you are, about your price predictions. And the bigger the number, the harder the number to justify, the more views you're going to get on that number. There's a lot of influencers who understand that game. You open up a video thumbnail and you put Bitcoin $10 million price target. Here's how. You're going to do way better than making a video that says, how to set up a node, right? What are Bitcoin nodes? People want the hopium. And so I've dabbled in that a little bit. I don't have a crystal ball. I will still use Bitcoin if it still stays at $30,000 for the next 10 years. Honestly, it's still useful to me. Hopefully it doesn't, but it is what it is. Sometimes it feels like it's been 10 years. But basically,
or more.
Yeah, basically from there, once I started getting into this rhythm of finding out what does my audience like, what are the YouTube views coming in? You get to see all the stats when you post these things. What's the click-through rate on your thumbnail? How long are people watching the video for? You get a better sense of what people want. And then you try and kind of straddle that line between what do you want to make and what does the audience want? And the big shift came for me last year because I realized that there was a huge lack of short form content. And I would say arguably late to the TikTok game. I could have started in 2020. I didn't really get started on the shorts until 2022. But as soon as I put them out, I was getting really good feedback on them from people wanting to learn about Bitcoin. TikTok was getting, thousands of views. And at one point, my TikTok was growing so fast that I thought it was actually going to become bigger than my YouTube, which I've been doing for like 4 years prior. So, I realized that was a really good medium. I started posting them on Twitter as well. And I think people really connect with those. Not every single one is going to be, a winner, but people like the 60-second stuff. It's a lot easier to share. You might even watch the video twice. And so the algorithm loves that. And it's a good challenge because you get to really hone your skills on explaining Bitcoin. You have to do it under 170 words each time, unless you're a very fast speaker. If you go over 170 words, it's more than a minute. And so I got really into that. And then also, El Salvador was a big turning point for me because I had watched Nayib Bukele's announcement at Bitcoin 2021. Jack Mallers on stage was like shedding a tear. You could really tell how big of an accomplishment that was for him and for the country. Yeah. And it was kind of scary at first because, if you actually read the Bitcoin law, it was like mandating people to actually use this. And it's crazy to mandate a new technology, but not really have an education rollout for it. So I was so curious. And that was why I ended up going to El Salvador. I was wondering like, okay, I'm going to go 2-3 months in. Are people going to actually know how this works? Are they going to be kind of like, put under the thumb to figure it out? Is Chivo functional? All of these questions. And then also what the history of El Salvador was as well. Is like, why this country? Why, Nayib Bukele, why is he the guy to be the first one to do this? And so many interesting questions and stories there. And in November 21, I ended up going down there with my girlfriend, paid a lot of money in getting journalists to actually help me. We got some interesting interviews that I never published, actually. You might know this guy. His name's Eugenio Chicas.
It sounds to me.
He's a very big opposition voice to Nuevas Ideas in
from Arena or FMLN, maybe.
I think he's one of them. I think he's maybe the FMLN. Anyways, he's a really interesting guy, and we managed to reach out to him and do this interview with him. And he was telling us actually that he was a bit older. He knew Nayib Bukele when he was a little kid, like 7-8 years old, because he was friends with Armando Bukele,
his father.
And yeah, exactly. And we learned so many interesting things about his background. I never got to put that into the documentary, but yeah, we worked with these journalists in the country. We got access to some really cool places and interviews with people people. I did my best to kind of make, whatever I could with it. It takes months to do these documentaries sometimes. So
Absolutely.
but it was amazing, and it's such a beautiful country. And the thing I really came away with was I have traveled to, Mexico, Peru, Colombia, Ecuador before. By far, I felt safer in El Salvador than any one of those countries. And
it was in 2021, right?
It was in 2021. Yeah, we were walking around, and so keep in mind, like, I might have had the sheltered gringo experience of El Salvador. We were in, the nice area next to the conference space in downtown San Salvador. We were walking around at night, getting McDonald's, going out for dinner. Everyone was so nice there. And then same with like El Zonte, El Tunco, walking on the side of the road. Felt really safe. Maybe just a stupid thing. Maybe I shouldn't have done that, actually. Who knows? But I come from a place that virtually has no crime in Vancouver, British Columbia. It's just too spread out here and too nice. The thing you fear here is cougars and bears, much more than people when you're walking around at night. So yeah. But I was amazed at, number one, how friendly everyone was. How open people were to do interviews down there about Bitcoin, to share the history of their country. And I had, frankly, we in the West, we complain so much about things like woke culture. Our prime minister in Canada is Justin Trudeau. I mean, how shitty would you have to feel about your country to elect a guy like that for the third time during the pandemic? There's a lot of people in Canada, and I'm going to get some heat for this, I think that kind of don't like themselves. And we elect these terrible, terrible politicians up here that do ridiculous things, because we think that they'll keep us safe or give us a social safety net or something. And people here are very jaded and cynical. And all throughout El Salvador, everyone we talked to, even though I had never seen El Salvador beforehand, I'd seen enough to know that the energy was different down there. And people were happy, and the journalists were telling us, like, we went to the center square of El Salvador where there's like a market, and he's saying like, I haven't been down here in about 3 years. Like, you just don't come downtown anymore. And he was like, this feels different. It's nicer. And we were kind of experiencing a bit of El Salvador through the lens of a local who was, used to avoiding certain areas. And that to me was so special, to be there really on the front lines of call it Bukele's revolution of really changing the safety and the security of that country. And I'm going back there in a couple months, and I'm so curious to see how it's progressed since. One of the big things I noticed down there too was like the amount of construction was incredible. On the roads, people were building new overpasses, and we were there when they were still building the new Chivo Pets building. And I remember we filmed drone footage around it when it was still under construction. 3 months later, the building's done.
Wow,
it's amazing. You know how long it takes to build anything in Canada? It's like, you want to build a 3-story pet hospital, it would take you like 4 years. They did it in like 6-7 months down there.
Wow.
So yeah, it was really an incredible experience.
Tell me, what was, you can pick one of your best moments in El Salvador. What can you take, like your bullet point, your highlight?
Oh, I think
the best memory.
I'm a very big nature person, so I loved hiking Santa Ana. Being on top and seeing the entire country like that, and then looking down into the pit. One of the coolest parts of that too was we were at the top of the volcano, and then there's this kid who comes up, and he's got this big backpack, this little thing, and it had like a hole in it. We were wondering what's in there. And he's hiking up the mountain, and he had all these popsicles he was selling for, I think, $1 or $2. And we talked to him, and he was like, "Oh yeah, like I come up here every day, basically.
Wow."
And I sell these popsicles, and it's like it's a pretty uphill hike. It's like an hour and a half.
Yeah,
at least
yeah.
I would say.
It's
God, I'd say he had at least 80 pounds of popsicles on his back, but he sold out completely. And I was like, wow, that is hustle to do this hike every single day, but that's good money, right? So like, okay, so I don't know, he had at least a couple hundred popsicles or something, but he sold out because the mountains, I mean, Santa Ana it gets busy up there now. So he's doing good work, but man, that's a lot of exercise to do every single day.
Yeah. Do you want to Coatepeque Lake also? It's nearby there.
Coatepeque. We went to this town, and it had this kind of like colonial style church. It was white. Maybe that was it. I forget the
No,
name.
Suchitoto could be.
Yeah, Suchitoto. We went to Suchitoto. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so beautiful there.
Yeah, I love that area too.
Actually, shout out to we have some. My family has some best friends there that they have a restaurant and it's called El Tejado. Go to El Tejado because they have really good food and beautiful views. They're really amazing and hardworking people.
Coatepeque Lake, is that like the big crater lake? We went to that one as well.
Yeah, and
That was really beautiful. Yeah.
yeah, and the water is like sky blue, super
Yeah.
clean, super natural. Yeah, super.
Yeah, that was really beautiful too. And driving around it, like it's amazing. It's like this big bowl. People are out there on their jet skis and stuff too.
That's so amazing, and I'm
Yeah.
glad that you had a really nice experience. That's one thing that I like to ask if you travel to El Salvador, how do you feel there? And I'm glad that you feel that way because the contrast actually it's huge. For example, a couple weeks ago, one of my sister's best friends came here, and they have like a small company, and they have some workers, but long short story, the workers before Bukele, they couldn't go to any other places because the places were really violent. They were controlled by gangs and everything. And her husband told us that one of those days that they were here, he got a call from one of his workers, and he asked like, "Oh, what are you working right now?" And he told one of the I can't remember right now the name of this city, but it was really violent. And no, I don't remember. I will put it on the podcast notes. But he was like, "What are you doing there? Get out there!" And he was like, "No, it's super safe. There are no more gang members. It's super clean. People are super happy. There are kids on the streets and the parks playing football or whatever." And she told us that that's, for example, they were before Bukele, they were from the opposition, and but they saw the changes. They were lucky because they were never got a struggle because of the violence, because they were under some areas, poor areas, but they have seen the change on their employees or people that tell them that they're happy, they're secure right now. And they told us like, man, we have seen the change, we have seen the difference, no matter our political thinking or whatever. We have seen the changes, and that's the important thing. Of course, people, I don't want to say that Bukele is a hero because no politician is a hero, but the thing is that as Bitcoin, you have seen some proof of work, and that's the important part, right? So
look, I think, wherever you are, people have like a hierarchy of needs. And I think it's been so clear that before anything in El Salvador, you have to make sure people are secure. Like the murder and the homicide rate and all that stuff was just, it's too high. You can't focus on job creation. You cannot focus on the economy. You cannot focus on almost anything until people feel like they can leave their houses. And that was such a problem in El Salvador for so long. And so the question that I have moving forward for El Salvador is, so Bukele, it seems to me, his strategy was to really invest a lot into the building up the military and security there quite a bit. He had a vision for the country. He wanted to get other people in on it too, right? Like if you see crimes, report crimes. We have the infrastructure now. He's built a lot of prisons, right?
One big prison, but yeah.
One big prison, right? But it's still important, right? And so the question I have moving forward is, okay, it seems like crime rates are down there twofold because number one, he's cracked down on it a little bit more. But number two, when people feel optimistic, they don't join the gang. So you're getting fewer people joining the gangs as well. The question I have that I worry about long term is that really sustainable if for any reason Bukele loses power? Are Arena and FMLN, I don't know if they're going to come back in 4 years or 5 years or 10 years. But they obviously failed at keeping that country secure for the longest time. And so I worry that, somebody like Bukele sets this up, but if the apparatus isn't there to maintain it long term, things can devolve pretty quickly. It's not like you get rid of the gangs 100% down there. They still operate, but they're going to operate a lot more sneakily down there. And so if things start to happen, maybe the economy stops doing well, maybe the country gets hit by a hurricane or something like that. Would the default be to, return back to this gang rule, or do you think it's kind of out of there long term? Do you think that Salvadorans have turned a chapter now for the next 20, 30, 50 years?
That's a really good question. And that's the debate actually that we have in our circles, because one thing that every time that I have this debate, we come with some conclusions that are kind of common. First one, I think that people have not learned about history, but I think most Salvadorians suffer what happened in El Salvador, So I think every Salvadorian, you can ask anyone, and even they didn't have a direct impact, but they know somebody that it was killed or kidnapped or whatever. So I think that's heavy for people, that they have that in mind, and they know that both parties, Arena and FMLN, failed clearly to win that. So that's one thing. And the other one about Bukele, that's the really big question, right? Because now I think he's going to win the elections again, so he will have 5 more years to continue developing what he started. But I think one of the important things that he also had to do is to find somebody that in the party that continue with everything that he's doing, like Bitcoin structures, like tourism, keep people safe and everything, right? So people are really happy. So I think if it's not him, it will be somebody else. Hopefully I get from the Nuevas Ideas, but yeah, that's something that politician needs to work on, right? But about the population, I think because of our history, hopefully we won't go back. But yeah, that's the main question, because if you look back and compare with other places in Latin America, for example, Ecuador, what is going on in Ecuador right now, it's super, super bad. And
they had the assassination, right, of one of the candidates there.
And they have a really good period of peace quite back there, like 5-6 years ago. They were growing, they were super peaceful, not peaceful at all entirely, but they were in the good path, and now they are in the wrong path. So yeah, it's quite complicated. Who knows, man? It's hopefully I wish I had the magic 8 ball to see the future and have the answers. But yeah, so going back to the question that I make you about films, one of the main questions that I want to ask you is that what are the most challenging things that you face as a creator, like a filmmaker, and maybe related to Bitcoin, because right now you're focusing on Bitcoin?
I think the most challenging thing about making films about Bitcoin is to actually visualize it, because when we talk about Bitcoin, we use a lot of jargon that is very hard for the average person to understand. When we talk about inflation and we talk about interest rates, and when we talk about sound money and all these concepts, like, how do you draw those things? Like what if I just ask you, draw sound money on a piece of paper? Like, what would you even start with? Like gold? But like, that doesn't really explain it. Draw inflation. Like, how do you draw inflation? And so film is a visual medium, right? Like it makes sense that a lot of Bitcoin material has really gotten deep in books and has gotten really deep in audio, because these concepts are things that we talk about a lot, and they're very academic. But when you make films, you can do the same thing where you just have a whole bunch of interviews, but it's basically just like a visual podcast. It's just a podcast with faces on it. And I feel like up to this point, that's been a lot of what Bitcoin films are. It's a lot of podcasts, shorter podcasts, maybe with people's faces, but that's not what film's about. Film is visual storytelling. It's storytelling through actions. It's storytelling through visual metaphors. It's storytelling through editing. It's storytelling through music. It's so rich. It's such a rich medium. And the biggest challenge with making Bitcoin films is really figuring out, how do I represent or talk about Bitcoin without talking to you straight about Bitcoin, right? How do I tell the Bitcoin story with objects? How do I tell a Bitcoin story through history, pictures, slideshows, showing real world impact? And so that, to me, it's been a fun challenge, but that's one of the biggest challenges about making films about Bitcoin, is how do you keep this interesting? Because there's a certain subsect of the population, if you just start showing them Michael Saylor talking to camera, they're going to tune out. They want to be entertained. They want to be taken on a journey through their learning experience. And so that's always been something I've had a challenge with, is like, well, how do we do it? And one of the examples I like to give of like how Bitcoin storytelling hasn't worked so far is that people still use these stock photos and images of like a physical coin of Bitcoin, because we have such a hard time as humans processing the idea of digital money. Like, what does that actually look like? It's just ones and zeros, that people default to showing this like little B coin with like the lines around it, and it's like spinning, and the news still do it. And so we don't think much of it. We look at that and we're like, yeah, well, they're not real Bitcoins. Go out on the street and ask people. And a lot of people actually think that Bitcoins are physical coins backed by, you know, digital money. And there were such a thing called like Cassius coins back in 2012. They would literally print the private key inside of the coin or something, or the seed phrase, or I don't know. But a lot of people, like, we ask them, what is Bitcoin? They're like, I don't know. Like, there's no physical thing. Or it's like, I saw, it's like a gold coin with like a B on it. Trust me, you start going out and you start talking to people who have never touched this space, and you learn that our media has been letting us down, because the way that they've told the story of Bitcoin, they've just clung to really basic concepts because they haven't been able to figure it out themselves. And so I think as Bitcoin filmmakers and storytellers, we have to start evolving past the old ways of telling the Bitcoin story and start figuring out new ways to tell it in a very, very visual way, in order to really clarify in people's minds what Bitcoin is. But it's going to be a challenge, but that's the joy of filmmaking, is overcoming that stuff.
Okay, lovely, man. I think it's a good point to make the trivia. It's going to be trick questions.
Okay,
easy questions.
See. Early for me, but I'll give it my best.
Okay, I'm going to explain it because it's the first episode in English. So it's going to be 3 questions in every episode. One question is going to be about Bitcoin, one question is about Salvador, and one it's about general culture. That are really easy questions, I think, but I don't know, because I make the question, so obviously I know the answer.
Okay, cue the game show music. We gotta have music.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
You see that, the sound effects. And yeah, so we're going to start with the first question, and I'm going to give you the question and 4 options. So talking about Bitcoin and their real words. In the context of Bitcoin, what does the acronym HODL stand for? I know you know. First option, high octane digital ledger. B, hold on for a dear life. 3, hyperlink online distribution layer. Or D, hashing output data locator.
I will answer B, hold on for dear life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well done. Yeah. And all right.
But the actual trivia is actually, it was technically not meant to mean that. Somebody mistyped it in Bitcoin Talk. They meant to say hold, and they misspelled it. That's actually
absolutely
the original.
Yeah, that's the original.
I've got a bonus point for that one.
Yeah, 2 points. All right. That's actually a really good extra information. It's good enough. Yeah. So the next one is this is about Salvador, and talking about Mayans. The iconic Maya archaeological site in El Salvador, known for its well-preserved pyramids and artifacts, is...
You know this one. I wanted to go there. Okay.
First, A, Chichen Itza. B, Tikal. C, Copan. Or D, Joya de Serén.
I think it's Tikal. No? B?
Is that your final answer?
I think so.
B. Tikal. No, it's
No.
D. Joya de Seren.
Joya de
Yeah.
Seren.
You didn't go there.
That's in Guatemala, right? Oops.
Yeah. Yeah, and Joya de Seren actually is an archaeological site that is in La Libertad, Department of Libertad, and it featuring a pre-Columbian Mayan farming village. So it's really beautiful. It's in
Okay, I gotta put that one on the list for sure.
Yeah. So the address is San Juan Opico, Agua Escondida, kilometer 32. I'm going to put it on the podcast notes so everyone can know about it and visit it because it's really beautiful. It's like a must. If you ever go to El Salvador, go to Guatemala and go to Honduras because it's really beautiful. And yeah. Sure. So, and the third question, all right, so this is about general culture, is which famous scientist formulated the laws of motion and universal gravitation? A. Albert Einstein. B. Isaac Newton. C. Galileo Galilei. Or D. Nikola Tesla.
So, sorry, it was the law of motion
and universal gravitation.
That was Isaac Newton.
Yes, Sir Isaac Newton. Yes, of course. Yeah. It's amazing. Well done.
Cool. 2 out of 3.
Yeah. Actually, I
like that.
think. Yeah. I think that one is tricky because many people have, because I made this question to one of my roommates and he said by default Albert Einstein because he saw Oppenheimer like 2 weeks ago, so people have Albert Einstein in their mind right now.
Yeah.
Have you seen it, by the way?
Yeah, I liked it. It was really cool. We saw it in IMAX, and
yeah, me too.
Like spoiler, but everyone knows there's like a bomb. You know the scene where like the scene where they go for the detonation of the bomb and it's just quiet. I don't know about you. I was like waiting for the sound and it's just silent for like, it feels like a minute. And then you're like, oh, they're just not going to play the sound. And then boom, it just like comes at you super intensely. And I love that. Like, that's really clever editing the way they did that.
Absolutely. That's one of the questions that I want to ask you as a filmmaker. How do you rate Oppenheimer overall?
It is one of my favorite Nolan films. You know what I loved about that movie is the soundtrack. I have been listening to that soundtrack since the movie came out. There's this track that kind of plays in the beginning when he's, in school, and it's called "Can You Hear the Music?" And then they do a version of that song later called "Quantum Physics." The composer is Ludwig Göransson. And it's like a slowed down version of that, but I love it. It's like one of my favorite compositions in movies. I've just listened to that track so often. Can You Hear the Music by Ludwig Göransson, the Oppenheimer original soundtrack. It's an amazing track.
Yeah, it's so, and you saw it on IMAX, but you also saw it on 70 millimeters.
I don't think the IMAX version I saw was 70 millimeters. I thought it was going to be, but it didn't feel like it was. You can kind of feel the difference. It's more grainy, but
yeah, I want to also shout out here in Barcelona because there's one of the movie theaters that can reproduce the 70 millimeters, and it was close to my home actually, so I felt really lucky to go there. Yeah, because otherwise, the other one I think is in Prague. But if not, I have to watch it digital. But I love those geek things about film.
Oh, I'm such a movie guy. Like my girlfriend and I, we go to the movies probably 2 to 3 times a month, no matter what's playing. Like we'll go and we'll see, if there's no big blockbusters, we'll go see one of the like indie horror films or even like a crappy film. But yeah, like I love.
So do you do the Barbieheimer then? Or how was it?
We saw Barbie. I liked Barbie. I thought it was good. It felt a little. I don't want to get into my opinion on Barbie. It wasn't made for me, right?
Yeah,
but like huge accomplishment. Like you know what I really appreciated about Barbie, and I realized is that they don't really make comedy films anymore for movie theaters. Like, when's the
That's right.
last time you went to a movie theater and you laughed a lot? Like,
Yeah.
it's been a while. Like the Marvel films, yeah, sort of, but they're not really comedies. They're action spectacles with
Yeah,
comedy.
they're more like a trailer for the next movie.
Exactly. And they never feel finished. Yeah, you're always like, oh, okay, what's like the next part, next part,
Mm.
next part. Well, they're done with Marvel films for a bit anyways, because it's writer's strike. But
Mhm.
seeing Barbie and like every couple minutes people were laughing, it made me realize like, wow, I don't think it's been since like 22 Jump Street that I've sat and watched like a comedy film with everyone. And it was great and I love it. And it's like we got to bring those back. Just kind of like, I know that Barbie cost quite a bit of money, but go back to
Yeah.
making, 10 to $30 million comedies, because it's so fun to watch those with crowds.
Absolutely. I also love it. I enjoy it. Of course, it wasn't meant, as you said, it wasn't meant for me, but I generally love it. I laughed a lot. And yeah, actually, we had a really good time. And one of the things that I also want to say before we start finishing the podcast and talking about Bitcoin is that one of the things that I thought once I finished watching Barbie and Oppenheimer is that one is that we need a more comedy films, but the other one is that people are also interested in biographies, not just Marvel, not just superheroes. So because Oppenheimer is purely by a biography of him, of his, so it was. I think it's one of the longest movies ever made. I don't know, but from Christopher Nolan at least, and and yeah, and you see people were really interested, and it was a huge success. So yeah, it was really good.
You're really right. And especially as that movie goes on, you realize like it almost just takes place in like back rooms, government offices, right? It's like a biopic through and through, but it's done really well. And yeah, like it keeps your attention the whole time. And I agree. Like I think part of the reason that it did as well as it did was because of Barbie and all the memes. And I also think because Christopher Nolan, like people will go out and see Christopher Nolan films, whatever they're about.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
But that's powerful, right? Like when you have a platform like that, then you can tell stories to people that are really important that might not get the exposure otherwise. And so, to me, the way that he told Oppenheimer, the whole story of it really rings true today about things that our governments do to censor and political motivations and the power and the responsibility involved with creating technology like that. Like even though it's a retelling of something that happened in like the 40s, 50s, it's a very powerful story today. So yeah.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. Actually, that is one of the things that I actually thought when I saw that. That's you can see pretty clear how governments work here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So going back to Bitcoin, and I'm really conscious about our time, but I really want to ask you because I have seen actually last week I saw this this video that you make with the truckers that you spend how was it 48 hours?
48 hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
BJ.
Yeah, with BJ. I want to ask you about that, and maybe, well, if you can give like a short context about that. Well, I think people know what happened with the truckers, but during COVID. But I really want to ask you, like, what are the lessons that you learned from being there, like immersed with the trucker during 48 hours?
Yeah, so like brief context for people who don't know, we had these trucker protests in Canada to get rid of the vaccine mandates, because in Canada they weren't letting people out of their houses. You had to have these passports to go to restaurants, all this stuff. A lot of countries had stuff like this, but it was pretty bad in Canada, because of Trudeau and some of his loony policies. And so the truckers were forced to get vaccinated in order to cross the border to do their job, which essentially was not, they were forced to get the vaccination, and that's not cool, because you can't really be a trucker and not eventually have a route across the American border. We're like 90% of Canadians live within 100 kilometers of the US. We're very close to it. So it was essentially like forced coercion of taking this vaccine that a lot of people weren't comfortable with. And so protests emerged around that. But obviously one of the things that happened was, instead of actually talking to the protesters and trying to deal with them in a rational way, like a real liberal government would do, They said these guys are breaking the law. We got to get them out of here. They're a bunch of racist white supremacists. And they are now raising all this money, and we got to freeze their bank accounts. And so that was like a huge line crossed in Canada. Never had anybody, you don't use emergency powers to break up a peaceful political protest. And that's what it was. And don't let them like rewrite history on that. But yeah, anyways, BJ, who I traveled with for 48 hours, he was one of the lead organizers of the trucker convoy and the protests and all that. And so he got to experience this all firsthand. He had his bank account frozen. He had issues with his trucking license and stuff. He actually took the vaccine. He didn't really care. He took the vaccine, but he didn't believe it was right that everyone was forced to take it. And so the big lessons learned from that, BJ is really interesting because as all the bank accounts were getting frozen, he understood the need for funding in some way. And he had kind of been into Bitcoin for a while. And then, people reached out to him, and he organized basically a ground up fundraiser to raise some funds in Bitcoin to distribute them to the truckers, right? Because they were losing money, not doing their routes and all that. And they raised, I think a couple $1 million in Bitcoin donations on chain through a couple of these sites. And this had never been done before. I think that was a real test for Bitcoin. Can it be used as a tool in protests? And I would say it was like partially successful. What had happened a little bit into it is that one of the volunteers involved in this was going around and giving people paper wallets with the seed phrases and all that stuff and the Bitcoin on there. And so that's kind of an attack vector. If it's not claimed upon and put into a nice secure wallet, that can be seized, and some of it was seized. And eventually his house, the guy who was distributing these things, his house was raided and some of his Bitcoin was stolen. But the point is the transactions worked. And if everything was organized just a little bit better, everyone could have taken self-custody of this Bitcoin, and the police can beg and cry all they want, but they wouldn't have been able to take any of it because you can just store Bitcoin in your memory, right? Just 12 words, right? So that was a really great learning experience. But what I really took away from that is that protest, it defined, I think it's going to be probably like the biggest event. And I say this in the video, I think it was the biggest event in Canadian history in a long time. Canadians, we don't have a cultural identity like maybe Salvadorians do, or maybe Americans do. We don't take immense pride in our origins and where we come from as a country, because we're also a very new country. We were basically a colonial branch of the UK for the longest time. I think we only really gained our independence fully from them in like the mid 1900s. Didn't even have a flag until I think the 30s or the 40s or something like that. I could be wrong on that, but I think we didn't have the Canadian flag as you know it today till the 30s or the 40s. Essentially we've had this identity crisis in Canada, and the trucker convoy for the first time was something where it wasn't, as the media describes it, wasn't just a bunch of like right wingers and vaccine conspiracy theorists. It was everybody. You had people on the left side, you had teachers, you had people from the right side, you had First Nations coming together, you had immigrants coming together. Trucking touches everyone's lives, right? Like we need trucking in order to have our way of life. We need our food, we need our Amazon products, all these things. Yeah. And so people sympathize and they empathize with what they were going through, people from all backgrounds. And the media, and you have to understand, in Canada, like we have state media, we have the CBC, it's the largest news network in Canada, and it's 80% of their money comes from the government. They were hell-bent on making it look like it was all just white supremacists, but you could go into crowds during the convoy and see people of all skin colors. We have a very diverse country. We have like tons of people from China, India, Middle East, Europe. Like we have a very diverse population here. And to make the argument that it was just a bunch of angry white people at the protest was super disingenuous. And so, the trucker convoy exposed, number one, just how cynical and disturbing the media apparatus is in Canada. But number two, it exposed a way of peaceful protests to raise capital when the government's cracked down on you. And so while the Bitcoin thing wasn't 100% successful, we know that the Bitcoin protocol and the way that Bitcoin money gets transmitted works well enough to skirt around government crackdowns. It cannot be seized. And we've been talking about this as Bitcoiners forever, like Bitcoin, permissionless, unseizable, all this stuff. Yeah, great. But when has that been tested outside individual cases? Rarely has, right? the trucker convoy was the first real test for Bitcoin, and that's going to be the lasting memory. I think that not everyone thinks about when they think about the trucker convoy, but it's going to be one of the most impactful events in Canadian history, and our link to Bitcoin here.
Yeah.
And the last point on this, and I don't want to spoil the video, go watch the video if you haven't, because it's pretty fun.
Yeah.
The last point on this too is that we have a lot of reasons to be divided everywhere, right? Every country right now is going through left versus right, big disagreements. I mean, you're lucky in El Salvador. Like Nayib Bukele seems to have a 90% approval rating there, so everyone's kind of on board, on one kind of side of the political fence, at least there, which is great. But everywhere else in the world, there's either dictators or there's like these really tight elections, and people hate each other, and people are upset at their neighbors and all this stuff. And Bitcoin, when you really understand it, you realize how apolitical it is, and how it has nothing to do with like left or right ideologies. I know a lot of libertarians embrace it, but it's a technology, and it's a tool for everyone in every part of civilization. And we need more things like that to unify around. And that's really kind of the power of Bitcoin. And that's what keeps me and BJ and all these other people hopeful for the future. Is Bitcoin is that tool, and this technology that represents hope for the future, hope for freedom and sovereignty, the values that founded the U.S. and many countries a long time ago. Independence, right? Self-sovereignty, ability to forge one's own destiny. Every country and every person aspires to that in some way or another, and Bitcoin represents that for everyone. And I mean, that was my big takeaway from it all.
Yeah, that's why I was asking you, because one of the things that in Bitcoin space is that we talk a lot about the technology, but as you mentioned, there are not much examples of what people can do besides my country and some other places. But for example, what happened in Canada was a really great example that how powerful can Bitcoin be, and how can help you, even if you said it wasn't 100% a success, but the seeds of what it was, it actually helped to the Canadians, to the truckers. So so that's why I wanted to ask, because I think it's really important that people not just understand Bitcoin, but they can see in real life how helpful it could be. And so I had just two more questions, and we finished. And that one is actually related to Canada. Do you think that they are getting that they are getting behind in Bitcoin adoption, or do you think because of what happens, they are considering to learn, the politicians or whatever, or they are not interested at all about getting regulations or adoptions on Bitcoin?
So here's something your audience might not know. Canada, I would say, because we only have 40 million people in Canada, we only have about 7 times the population of El Salvador, not even. I mean, that's crazy to think about. Canada's a massive country. Canada's like hundreds of times bigger than El Salvador, and we only have about 7 times the population. It's a very, very vast country with a lot of people, or not a lot of people actually, that just are on the border. But if you look at all of the Bitcoin products and services and innovations that have come out of Canada, look at how many core developers are from Canada. Look at companies like CoinKite, ShakePay, Bull Bitcoin, even Vitalik Buterin is from Canada. We have a ton of Bitcoiners, Vitalik not included in there, and a ton of Bitcoin talent and a ton of innovations in Bitcoin and some of the best products in the world. Canadians have world-class Bitcoiners, and we had our own conference. Greg Foss, Lawrence Lepard, like we're all Canadians, So you have that on the one hand, where we have a really great community of Bitcoin builders here. But on the other hand, our government, while we have done a few things here, we have a Bitcoin ETF in Canada. We have different regulations around it versus altcoins. We're still really behind in, I would say, general Bitcoin adoption. From the polls that I've seen, apparently a larger percentage of our population holds Bitcoin than America. I can't back test that. I feel like, they say that 10% of people own cryptocurrency of some sort, and most of that is Bitcoin in Canada. I don't know. I don't know about that. I've talked to hundreds of people, and I would say it's probably closer to like 2%. But the point is that there are little pockets in Canada where you see a lot of great Bitcoin adoption. Juan, if you're ever around Vancouver, you're welcome to stay with me, number one. But number two, Vancouver is probably the richest city for Bitcoin adoption in Canada, and I would say probably on the West Coast. We have about 40 stores now, and it's thanks to this one business that does merchant payment facilitation called CoinOS. They've gone around, and so in Vancouver, there's people who have Airbnbs that will take Bitcoin. There are food places, there's barber shops, there's tanning salons. We got like one little convenience store. We're getting people here on a very grassroots level accepting Bitcoin, and we have our Vancouver Bitcoin meetups. We get like 100 people. Jeff Booth, again, another Bitcoiner from Vancouver, and Samson Mao, he's on Vancouver Island. So we have a lot of Bitcoin talent here. We have good Bitcoin merchant adoption, but on a federal level, our politicians still have no idea really what Bitcoin is and what it's meant for. And the liberals in particular, we have one politician, his name is Pierre Poilievre. He's likely, based on the polls right now, to be the next prime minister of Canada. He's a big fan of Bitcoin, and he did videos talking about how he likes the ability of people to have other forms of money to escape inflation. And he's been very public about it. The opposition parties have actually used it against him. They've said, oh, if you took Pierre Poilievre's advice, you would have lost, 60% of your money in Bitcoin or whatever, right? Because he was talking about it when it was like 60K or something. So it's already become an issue on the political front, but in terms of understanding Bitcoin, very few people do in Canada still. So a lot of work needs to be done, but I'm hopeful maybe 5-10 years from now, I would say that Canada will be, as a population, far ahead in Bitcoin adoption than the US. I would say right now it's about the same, but I think we have all the roots it's going to take for us to be one of the countries that understands and gets Bitcoin in, let's just say, the G7 countries before the rest.
And my last question is, any advice to other creators that are starting their careers, or maybe that they are creators, consolidated, but want to start to to create content on Bitcoins? And last but not least, what are you up to?
Okay, advice for other creators. It depends where you are in the creator journey, but I would say this. If you want to make content for Bitcoin, you've got to get on Twitter. It took me way too long to realize that. There's a lot of people who do just YouTube or X or whatever they want to call it these days. You can do well being on TikTok and all these things, but like post your videos on Twitter, because I was shocked at how much more interaction I get on there. It's just where all the Bitcoiners hang out. And Nostr too. Get on Nostr as well.
Nostr.
But number two is reach out and collaborate with other creators. I used to be very discouraged. I was getting to a point where I was making these videos and I wasn't getting a lot of views, and I was really frustrated because I was trying to figure out, like, how do I get more exposure, and how do I get people watching this? And it's important to build a community around you. So reach out to other creators, collaborate. You got to do this together. If you try and just be a creator alone, maybe you can get famous, but if you have a network of people that you're helping that are also seeing your content and elevating your content, you're going to have a much easier time, and you're going to be able to stay motivated to keep producing through these, either bear or sideways markets. Build that community, because what's important is that if we want to explain Bitcoin to the world, it's not going to happen in like 2 videos. It's not going to happen in like, one game or anything like that. Like this is a journey. This is something that you're signing up for. Hopefully you're like a soldier on the front lines. You got to be able to commit years to it to get that message across. If it's not for you, it's not for you. But I've been doing this for 3 years, and I feel like I'm just beginning. So that's like a glimpse into what the Bitcoin creator journey can be like. And then hopefully don't run out of money in the meantime. It's really hard to raise money. Don't make it your full-time job like me yet until you got some financial stability. That was a big mistake. I jumped into doing this full-time too early before I had a lot of money, but we're going to figure it out. But yeah, take your time. It's a long journey, and build a community around you, and you'll be able to do it for a long time. What am I working on? I got a bunch of things I'm working on. But the big one, and I'm really excited about this video. I thought it was going to be a small thing, but it ended up being a really big thing. Let me just find something here real quick. Okay, so I have always tried to figure out, why are adults always saying Bitcoin's too complicated, or like, oh, it's not my thing, it's not my industry, I don't get it, right?
Yeah.
And I remember, like, my journey was really hard to get. It was very difficult. And I thought, like, man, hopefully people make learning about Bitcoin easier. And the year is the year of our Lord 2023. Bitcoin is easier than ever to learn than any other time in history. And yet there's still a lot of people who don't know the first thing about it, either because they don't care or because they think it's too confusing, but usually because they think it's like a big deal. We have no more excuses. This is a book from...
I know that book.
Yeah, there you go. So we're doing a video. I'm doing a video with them where I called up and I got like 4 6-year-olds off of Craigslist, of a Craigslist ad, and I invited them into a space to play the Shamory card game and teach them what is a blockchain, what is a 51% attack, who is Satoshi, all of these things that I went around asking people in Vancouver about, they didn't know the first thing about. And so that's your call to action, is if a 6-year-old can understand Bitcoin, you can too. And we need to stop telling people that it's too complicated or you wouldn't get it, or I don't have time to explain it to you. No, there is time, there are products, and we can't give up on people. I think sometimes Bitcoiners feel like, well, if you don't get it by now, I don't have time to explain it to you. You know, it's too late. No, I hate that attitude. If you think you're too above explaining Bitcoin to someone, then bugger off. You have no right calling yourself a Bitcoin influencer if there's certain people you won't talk to because you think that they're too dumb or ignorant. You got to level with people. You got to put in the effort. So the video I'm making is kind of about that. It's also about how we reintroduce Bitcoin to people, because I think that the next bull run that happens, we can't use all these whole like number go up and all that stuff, right? Like it's cool, we'll think about price, but if you get people thinking about price, they're only going to get let down. You want to explain it from a first principle standpoint. And so you want to get people thinking like children. Children are curious. They don't know everything about the world. And if we can become children, then we can understand Bitcoin a little bit better than we do right now. So that's the whole video, and that's going to be out in about 2 weeks.
Perfect, man. Perfect. All right. Thank you for letting us know, and shout out also to the Total Twins, actually the Bitcoin episode that they
amazing show. Yeah,
amazing show, really good. So shout out to them. And actually I'm going to put also in the podcast notes so you can watch it if you have kids and you want to watch it. Actually my nephew watch it, so I'm going to put it again to rewatch it. Well, yeah, Julian, thank you for your time, thank you for being here, thank you for being part of the trivia questions to learn a little bit more about Salvador.
Thank you so much for having me, Juan. El Salvador has like a very special place in my heart, you know, from visiting it, from getting to know the people. And I'd say this to people like who haven't been there: go to it for Bitcoin, go to it for whatever, but what you should pay attention to when you visit El Salvador is look at people's faces there, and if you can speak Spanish, or you can find a tour guide and people who speak English there, speak to locals and ask them about their country, because I think more in El Salvador than almost any other place in the world right now, people are extremely hopeful for the future there, and hope is infectious, and that's what's going on in El Salvador right now. You have an infectious level of hope when you travel there, when you leave, and it's hard not to have like a smile on your face in that country. So I love that. Like, that's really, really special.
Thank you for your kind words. And yeah, I know people tell me about that every single time, every single day. Even I saw with my friends that still live there, my family members. Yeah, they have hope. And again, me, for example, that I live abroad, I see that even here in Europe, actually hope it's really odd nowadays. And to see that in a country, and it's really impactful that a small country is giving hope to people, because yeah, after all what happens, it's like, yeah, people don't see much hope right now. We are facing difficult times, but yeah, go to El Salvador again. It's a beautiful country, and just as you said, don't just go for Bitcoin. Visit it. It's really beautiful. And my final question is your favorite pupusa.
Oh, I think it's a Loroco.
The Lorok. Oh yeah,
Yeah, I like that one.
so lovely, so lovely. All right, guys. See you in the next episode. See you in the next week. Ciao.
Peace.